Much of your work producing music is going to be focused on a computer. Now, computers are great general purpose devices, but for working with music, you want to have some ways to get musical ideas into your computer. Now, one of the ways is with an audio interface, but really when you're talking about MIDI production, which will be a lot of what you'll be doing, you're going to want to have a number of different types of keyboard controllers. So in addition to entering MIDI notes, you're probably going to want to use controllers to work with all sorts of aspects of how the software works. So let's start out with something that's very simple. If we take a look at this simple MIDI controller, it's very small, very portable, and it really has the absolute basic minimum that you need to enter music. So it has a keyboard. So what you'll see is that many of these keyboard controllers don't have a lot of keys. So to get higher and lower in register, we have octave buttons. And there's a few other things that we'll have on here, but at the most basic level, you now have the ability to enter notes into your computer. So let's take a look at a more full-featured MIDI controller. So I'm going to bring this up in front of us now. And what we're going to see is this is going to be a really good tool for entering MIDI notes. So at the most basic level, I can play notes here. But what about expressiveness? So one of the things that you'll want to look for in a good MIDI controller is a couple different ways to control the sound. One of the ways we can control it is with something called pitch bend. So if I'm playing, let's say, the note F, I can play the note F and play the note G, but I can also play the note F and bend up to the note G and bend down to F again. So this is going to give me the ability to do some kind of more expressive performances. Something like that is going to add a little bit more of expression to my performance. The other thing I can also do is I can add effects like vibrato. Okay, and I can control the amount of vibrato. Sometimes it gets a little extreme. Pitch bend down, vibrato down, pitch bend up. So there's a lot of musical expression that can be done with a controller. One of the nice things about this controller, it gives you, in addition to the keys, some pads, and it gives you some knob controllers. So with these knob controllers, what I'm able to do is control some things like the timbre of the sound. Duller, brighter. So I'm going to roll the sequence for a minute. I'm going to just listen to the bass part, and in real time, I'm going to be able to control the tone. So as this plays, I can get this brighter and duller. It's a really cool effect. And it's something that I really can't do using a mouse, using a keyboard controller, just directly on the computer. I can also take a look at controlling some other things like delay. Okay, so combining all these things together, I can add pitch bend, mod wheel, vibrato, delay. So there's a lot of things I can do with this controller. Now the other thing that's kind of cool about this is that this is going to give me pads. Pads are really useful for entering drum parts. You can always enter them with keys on a keyboard, but it really makes a lot more sense to play something physically. So if I roll this, it really gives me the ability to physically play the drum parts. In addition, we're also taking a look at this as something that's going to give me the ability to go into different octaves. An octave lower, octave higher. So this 25 key keyboard can be made to control the entire range. For producing music, this is a pretty good starting point. Now, there's some other things that we might want to add to this. So I'm going to move this over to the side, and I'm going to bring up a controller. This is a very simple controller that's going to allow me to control the mix of what I am doing. So let's add this, and I'm going to just simply plug this in. And right now what I'm going to see is that this, in addition to knobs and sliders, is going to give me a transport control, which is cool because if I want to not touch the keyboard, I can just hit play. Now, doing that, I can also control the levels of individual channels here. Okay, so I can bring these down. Okay, bring things up. Okay, let's bring in a keyboard part on this. And I'll bring the level down all the way here. So this is going to give me tactile control of my mix, and it makes a lot more sense to really manipulate my mix physically with this type of controller. There are some other options, some other things that we can use. This particular controller. Now, this controller is set up specifically to work with Ableton Live. So what you're going to see on this controller is that it's also going to give you these mix control levels. Okay? But in this view of Ableton Live, this is called Session View. And I have these individual clips that I can use this controller to trigger. So let's say if I want to start another loop, I can add another loop. Bring these other musical parts down. Add another loop. And another one. So this controller works really well, allowing me to trigger individual clips as well as to control the mix. One of the things that we're seeing is that manufacturers are designing controllers to work with specific pieces of software. And so with Ableton Live, we have a controller called the Push that was designed and built by Ableton to be tightly integrated with the entire workflow of Live. So as I take a look at this device, what you're going to see is this looks very, very different from anything that we've seen so far. Keyboard controllers, mix controllers. And so with this, we have some of the basic functionality, certainly of a transport control, where we can start and stop this. But the other thing that we can do is we have this layout here that will allow us to play notes. So this is working pretty nicely just in terms of giving us some basic sounds. It's a completely different way of playing keyboards. And by going through different patterns, we can start creating visually some ideas of musical lines. And we can see that the lights that are lit up in green are going to be octaves. So it's a really cool way to start thinking about reorganizing and working with music. Likewise, we can use this controller for drum control. We can use this to launch clips. So as we did earlier, when we take a look at this, we can have clips laid out here, and I can start this one, okay? And some of my controls here I can use as well. And you can see that what comes up on the Push is I choose a synthesizer or some sort of sampler. I have all the parameters right in front of me here that I'm able to control. So if I was to go to, let's go to the keyboard part. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to just adjust this mallet force. And what I'm doing here is just making this much softer. stiffness, okay, time level. So all these features make it really easy to control many different aspects of what the synthesizer in Ableton Live is doing. So this is a very powerful addition to your studio if you are in fact using Ableton Live. One of the things to be aware of is that as you add more and more MIDI controllers, you're probably going to start running out of USB ports on your computer. So at this point, you want to start thinking about adding to your system some sort of USB hub or USB dock. So what I have here is a dock controller that's allowing me to connect directly to my computer through Thunderbolt, and it's giving me a number of ports, 4 USB in back, 1 USB in front, and a few other different types of connections. So in my studio, just about whatever I want to add, it's going to be really easy just to plug it into my dock, have it added to my system, and I don't have to really worry about using the power from my computer to power USB devices. So in terms of controllers, you have a lot of different options available to you, and what you want to think about is what you're going to be doing producing music. Are you simply going to be coming up with some song ideas? Maybe all you would really need would be a simple keyboard controller. Are you going to be producing electronic music? You might want to then have more control over the synthesizer parameters. And if you're fully committed to working with Ableton Live and you want to be fully integrated with the workflow, and you really would like to get away from working on your computer, this push is a great option. So regardless of what you choose, your choice of controller is going to define a lot about how you're going to work producing music.